I think if you look at the 90s, CIOs were expected to be more technical because that's when the evolution of technology was taking into a maturity stage, when adoption of technology was normalizing in the organizations. There's a lot of expectation that the CIO would be more technical. But what's changed over the last 10 years is that the expectation that the CIO is more business oriented, is more financial oriented, so can carry and enable the business to be able to grow revenue or optimize the cost so that, you have this sort of increasing margins, where possible across the product. So CIO roles, if you looked at 90s, they would come from the traditional IT background, whether it was mid-range, mainframe, naturally, as a team leader, and then as the organization progress and, end up in a CIO role. You look at 2010, most CIOs are from very financial background, non-IT background, or IT folks who have gone through an MBA, started to speak the financial language, the sales language, the commercial language. That's what's expected because, for example, I report into the CEO here. So the conversation is all about strategy. How do we transform the business and how is technology going to help there rather than, what desktop, what laptop, what servers, what application components. And they really don't care about that because there's a trend in technology where it's becoming more utility. You've got new concepts coming in cloud computing where, if you look at it, they can actually go source that service externally, right? There's no expectation that the CIO is going to be the technical know-how. You can actually source it just as you source any other services externally. So I think that 10 years, it's been a good progress. I think it's heading the right direction, becoming more business-oriented, more financially savvy, ability to, master business cases, justify any expenditure, focusing less on what the nuts and bolts of technology is. And I think that's what the transition has been from CIO in the 90s to the CIO in 2010. I think the key here is sourcing, right? Because you look at where technology is evolving, the whole cloud computing paradigm, which is an evolution. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution. I call it the perfect storm of technology, because you've got high-speed broadband, you've got technology that can actually be enabled externally and be delivered through the internet and within clients. So you've got this sort of the confluence of these technologies coming through, and that's the perfect storm. So you've got this cloud computing concept catching up, pretty aggressively. What's happening then is the expectation of CIO skill sets is more about how do you manage external vendors, the external suppliers in the cloud concept, and deliver to your business outcomes. How do you sort of construct that? How are the contracts constructed? How are the relationships constructed? And that's going to be the key because you're going to start seeing a lot of new roles coming up in IT. Not the traditional IT roles like systems administrator, application developer, or those sorts of roles, but more about business engagement, vendor management, sourcing technology. So that's going to be the evolution. So CIOs now need to be very, very commercially savvy, but on the other hand, they also need to be risk aware. See, the concept is here. We've all done outsourcing in the past, right? It's not a new concept. But it is about how do you manage the risk, because now you're handing over the data, which could be dispersed in multiple jurisdictions, while you are accountable by the regulator to ensure that the data is, in a particular jurisdiction. How do you manage that? What are the contractual obligations you need to put in place? How do you manage risk? How do you manage security? So you got that sort of, skill set in being risk aware, business oriented, but also being ability to source and manage multiple services. I think that's going to happen. So I think it's a valid topic. Keeping in mind the whole concept of cloud, which is talked about. See, the whole concept of social networking has linkages in the IT world in the concept called crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is about going out and saying, okay, I've got a problem. I'm going to lay it out in the public domain, and it's going to be pretty much using multiple people to contribute to that particular problem. In terms of solution for that problem. Social networking is just sort of an augment of that, which basically means that how do I connect and collaborate across varied domains and varied people in different jurisdictions and different backgrounds. If you look at social networking and the application on the enterprise, we've been grappling with knowledge management. Look at the 80s and 90s. Knowledge management was the key buzzword, right? What it is about is, who's got pockets of information, how do I get that information, and the underpinning data together so that I can make rapid decisions, so either grow my business or optimize my cost. social networking plays a significant role in that, because you've got technologies, which we're all aware of, all the famous brand names, which is enabling that sort of collaboration without any barriers. So social networking has a very critical path in enterprise. Now, having said that, it's all fit for purpose. Now, in certain organizations, you would not need to introduce that level of interaction, because they have good processes already in place for information disbursement. So I think, looking into the overall context, I think social networking has significant contribution from a collaboration and building a team together in enterprise. Naturally, on the consumer side, on the personal side, everybody's aware of how social network is catching up. But in the enterprise, it's got a very valid role to play. But again, it's fit for purpose.